see how it works. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first live panel for the Content Marketing Virtual Summit. Today, I'm going to go around the squares and have everybody just quickly say hi and say where you're calling in from, and also your company. And then we'll come back and I'll ask you to describe your company in a moment. So, Ryan, maybe you could start. Say hi and where you're calling in from.
Hey, my name's Ryan Miller. I'm calling in from Brisbane, Australia, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Wrapped.
Great, thank you. Ellie, how about you?
Hi guys, I'm Ellie Herneman. I'm the CEO of Truffle Social, and I am calling in from the other side of the world in London.
Awesome. And Jonathan?
Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Pointer, Managing Director of Streaming House, and I'm actually coming to you from Newcastle, Australia.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome everybody. It's Jason, and just some quick statistics about Content Marketing Virtual Summit that's going on right now. Just since we went live, we had over 1,000 people commenting and liking on the posts and sharing posts. So that's really been great. We have speakers representing, multiple countries and continents and types of businesses. So really excited to dig into the panel today and have Ryan, Ellie, and Jonathan representing different backgrounds, different points of view, and fielding questions we've gotten from you guys, as well as questions from other speakers as well. So Ryan, maybe it would help for everyone. I think we'll just go around and just talk a bit about the business that you're spearheading. If you could choose one, I think for you, it'll probably be Wrapped, and just share with people what is Wrapped.
Yeah, sure thing. My background's been in film, video, marketing, and digital for about 10 years. And as you kind of alluded to, there's another business that I'm a part of called Ride Free Media. It's a full service video content agency. But what I'm spearheading at the moment is a company called Wrapped, and it's come about out of the work that we've done in Ride Free. And it's all just about helping make it easy for brands to plan, create, and share high quality video content. And the way that we're doing that is making it a lot more accessible to anyone without necessarily having a film degree.
So people who don't have a full video production team can use Wrapped to essentially improve their video creation workflow and learn best practices as well, right? So that's very cool.
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's just kind of helping brands kind of bring that capability in-house, just to cope with the demand of video content just across all aspects of the business nowadays. It seems like it's just, you can never really quite catch up to where video is needing to be used.
Awesome. Ellie, how about yourself?
So I have been running Truffle Social, which is a social media agency based over here in the UK. I've been doing it for well over a decade now, so quite a while. And we're perhaps one of the most established agencies to purely focus and specialize in social media. And we've been around for a while, so we've really seen it all, been through all sorts of adventures. But in terms of the services that we provide, we're a full service agency. So we do everything from social media management, a lot of strategy. We run a huge amount of influencer campaigns, and we do a lot of performance marketing and paid social. So it's the kind of full spectrum. We always find that no two clients are ever the same. So we're very much about kind of providing a super bespoke and tailored strategy and campaign kind of plan across the different brands that we work with. So I'm excited to be here and to be thrown a few questions.
Great. It's nice to have you here, Ellie. And, I just wanted to mention that on Truffle Social, one thing I really like is that you mentioned that it's a social partner for adventurous brands. And I think that is really cool because you're kind of almost saying like, hey, if you're going to do social, let's really stand out. Let's really be unique and make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important to us. We're all about kind of helping guide our clients through the process, and very much these days, social isn't just kind of social media online. It's obviously like social in in every aspect in real life, etc. So we're always looking at the kind of broader horizon.
That's exciting, really exciting. Jonathan, if you could share a bit about Streaming House and about your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks. Well, not unlike Ryan, we've got a digital agency, Nimbler Digital, based in Newcastle, and really a lot of content marketing for Nimbler. And it was from that we carved out a niche to build a live streaming and video marketing company. The live streaming thing just took off around the time we set it up, and we work with clients large and small. But they might be hybrid events, they might be live events, they might be remote events. The fact that we've got web developers as part of our team means that we can make bespoke platforms or bespoke websites for our clients. They're not, they don't have to join any of the sort of more general platforms, and that gives them privacy. It enables us to really brand them properly and give their customers a very unique experience when they're live streaming an event through us.
Awesome. Yeah, I think live streaming is something a lot of people are still learning, the different levels of live streaming. And this is an example of one, but the kind of live streaming I think you do at Streaming House is sort of at a whole nother scale, where you can have hundreds and hundreds of people attending and having different activities and integrated chat and all that. So it's a really exciting to have that represented, here today. So we're going to have a chance to dig into each of the different areas. So the first area, there's just to sort of kick it off, is going to be on the social media side. And I think, Ellie, you mentioned that you're really looking at a bespoke kind of approach for each of your clients. So there were questions around choosing the right influencers and having the right influencers participate with a specific brand. So you can take that question any way that you think would be most helpful to people to think about having a bespoke strategy for their social, for their brand, and possibly tie in how to choose the right types of influencers.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a $1 million question, like who is the right fit and how do you spread your budget? And I mean, so many different kind of factors and variables to consider when you're putting together an influencer campaign. So you could go with your macro influencers, or you could go with a whole spread of micro or nano. But really what you've got to kind of start off with is asking yourself, first of all, what are my objectives? And that might be, ultimately a lot of the time it will be, if you're, I don't know, some sort of like supplement brand, vitamins or something, you might be looking for conversion. You might be looking to drive awareness as well. But in that mix, you need to really consider, okay, how am I going to get from A to B and achieve all of the success that I'm looking for? So what we will often start with is drawing up a list of influencers who we feel that might be kind of like right in terms of providing the right context, providing the right kind of content that is very much kind of like in line with the approach that you're looking to achieve for that brand. Now, of course, like with every single influencer, they all come with completely different personalities, completely different formats and styles in which in how they produce their content. So many of them are kind of video based, and a lot of them are kind of like very much more about product placement, for example. And it's not a bad thing to have like a good spread of that content. But what we'll always look at is what is their engagement rate, and how effective do we think that they are going to be in delivering impactful content that will really make a difference and help kind of adhere to those objectives. So it's not actually as glam as it always sounds, and it always starts off with a spreadsheet, which we're constantly using. But just as long as you've kind of got like a good set of measurements in place. So, what is their engagement rate? How many followers do they have? and then based on that that number of followers and their engagement rate, you can more or less calculate how big their reach is going to be for one of their posts. Then you can kind of work backwards and figure out, okay, well, how many eyeballs do I need to achieve or to receive in order to for that to then convert into sales or for someone to then act on it. So yeah, start with a spreadsheet. And then I would also say, like in Instagram, for example, there's a really clever little just drop down so that if you find an influencer that you think is appropriate, Instagram's algorithms are brilliant in that you can click on the drop down button and it will generate a number of other kind of like similar influencers and people who share kind of a similar approach. So that's always a good way. And then if you're a bigger agency and you've got access to all of the tools, there are so many different kind of platforms and pieces of software, like Meltwater, for example, who we work with, who have some wonderful kind of very kind of accurate tools that just kind of you can put all of your objectives in and apply certain filters, and it will generate like a massive list of influencers for you. So you can do it.
I'm going to just jump in really quickly. So just to summarize, I think for people listening, if you're taking notes or you want to take action, one of the things I thought was interesting was just the idea that you start with actually measuring and doing some research on engagement. So you don't just jump in on the flashiest influencers, the ones that just strike you right away. That's also quite an interesting thing right away, and I can see how that would be so valuable for companies to have someone help them walk through that. The second suggestion you made, which is interesting, is sort of lookalikes, where you have a micro influencer or you have an influencer. You can actually use the tool to find lookalikes. And then the third that you were saying is that there's some tools out there that can also help provide some more kind of deeper views. I'm going to follow up with some questions regarding that. And one of the questions that people did ask is, let's say that they've got 3 or 4 influencers that they've engaged. We haven't discussed which platforms are you most excited about right now. So I think that's a kind of a preliminary question before we go down to the next question. But there's obviously for video and for social content, people are probably wondering, like, is TikTok something that brands are actually using, or is that more just for for entertainment only? Then just quickly, like, compared to say Instagram and Facebook and say YouTube. So what are the channels, Ellie, that you're currently most engaged with your clients?
I think the kind of apple of our eye at the moment is TikTok.
Oh, wow.
And traditionally we've been, and I'd say we're still kind of very much kind of focused on Instagram as well, but we work across every channel. However, TikTok has the engagement rates are just through the roof. I think it's got about I think there's a 17.5% average engagement rate on any TikTok video versus on Instagram, I think it's like 1.3%. So the numbers there are immediately kind of like show just how effective TikTok can be in terms of exposure and reach. And there are also, like, obviously some certain question marks that we have over, how long will this last for TikTok? How long will TikTok kind of take the lead in terms of that engagement? Because now other platforms are doing everything that they can to make sure that they are creating like some good, healthy competition with the other platforms. Like you've seen YouTube, for example, with their shorts. I think LinkedIn was trialing it as well for a while, and it's constantly changing. And also now I think TikTok's about to bring out 10-minute long videos. So it's really interesting in terms of like how the platforms are constantly changing. But in terms of engagement rates, like TikTok is just like stands out above all other platforms for the time being.
It's really fascinating. I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't shared it. And I think for a lot of people, that's really a nice, juicy thing for them to learn. early on in the panel today. So thanks for sharing your experience there. We're going to come back to Ellie in a moment after we go around the table. So we'll go to Ryan, and Ellie has mentioned TikTok. Ellie has mentioned Instagram, YouTube as well. She mentioned the shorts, and she mentioned different formats coming out and a lot of competition. So one of the questions that we have gotten is people are feeling like they can't compete if they're not a billion-dollar company with a video production crew and all of that. So the question to you, Ryan, is what can the small and medium-sized business, what kind of equipment, can they start with in order to, make acceptable quality videos for these different channels?
Yeah, sure. I think what actually plays in the small business favor now is that all these channels kind of have brought to light the need for organic and a bit more of a raw form of the content. I think a lot of the time the audience is less caring now, a little bit more about what camera did you shoot that on, or how many lights have you used, and just is the content itself actually engaging. Having said that, there is a lot of rubbish and kind of low quality stuff out there. So it is important to actually elevate your brand above all of that noise so that you do stand out in that space. Getting started with video equipment, obviously you're going to want to start with your smartphone. It's an incredible capture device. What it lacks though is a couple of key things. The first being it's not great to be using it handheld. So the first thing you're going to want to invest in is just a tripod and something to keep your phone stable with. Second, and this is probably the most important thing actually out of anything, is just to get good quality audio. The phone does a really poor job of just recording audio. And if you're doing pieces to camera, it's really important probably just to invest in a lapel mic. They're really cheap and accessible these days. And it will go a long way to making your video content look like a professional video. And then finally, you want to just think about lighting. And your best friend there is actually the sun. You want to make use of any natural light that you have. So if you're in a room with a window, then you're going to want to go and use that natural light. It's going to be way more powerful than any of the lights that you can buy. And it's also going to look a lot nicer and a lot more natural too. But if you are going to want to invest in some lights, then you can start off with some pretty cheap and easy LED lights that just would attach onto the top of your tripod or near your phone, or potentially a ring light, which is also fairly common these days as well. So those three elements really, plus your smartphones, are really what you need to get in the game, I suppose, with some really high quality professional video content that's not going to break the bank.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think people may not even know that it's possible to create good quality video using your smartphone. So I think that's something that I'm sure people will want to have a follow-up on, in terms of, what kind of equipment you recommend for different levels, entry level. And I think you will have a link to some resources on your site as well. And then Ellie, if you have anything on your site that you would like to share with our audience, regarding some of the things you shared as well about TikTok and the engagement rates, or examples of the spreadsheet you mentioned.
I've got those too. There's a wonderful table that we refer to that literally has all of the kind of like key stats for number of users, how much time they're spending on average on each platform, and engagement rates and things like that. So I'll post that up on the Truffle Social Instagram feed later today.
Okay, great. Yeah, and we'll link to that. So back to Ryan, just to kind of go a little deeper. I think one of the questions that has come up is it okay to record in 720, or should people record at 1080, or do you have any advice on the quality that they should be using when they record?
Yeah, if you're going to use your smartphone, then the standard that it records in is actually pretty good. It's going to probably record in 1080p by default. Most phones now, you can actually bump that up to 4K. It's not really required, particularly because a lot of the outputs of where you're going to be ended up putting your videos are going to be used and displayed in a 1080 format on a smaller screen. So I would probably advise against shooting in 4K unless you want to do some advanced editing, or unless you're going to put it on a bigger screen or something like that. Otherwise, yeah, just your standard smartphone. Pretty much anything within the last 2 years will be of the highest quality, I guess, video recording codecs and formats. The phones have really stepped it up in that game. And definitely with the release of the iPhone 13, it's actually starting to bridge a little bit more into filmmaker land. So it's been interesting to see them put basically a professional camera in a smartphone device now.
Are you equally sort of happy with non-iPhone, like Android type phones? Are they as good?
Yeah, pretty much every phone manufacturer kind of hangs their hat, I think, on one kind of key or core feature just to separate, because they're all basically as good as each other now in the video recording space. And so some might have crazy zoom, others might have better lenses, but they're all pretty much as a standard fairly equal now in the phone space.
Well, that's good. So it's not just iPhone. People can still make good quality videos with their phone with the right lighting and even with a non-iPhone, even with
definitely.
That's good. That's good. I'm think that's good to know. So Jonathan, we're going to go to Jonathan for a minute. So Jonathan, live streaming. A lot of people probably have different definitions of what live streaming is, right? So somebody might think live streaming is just going live on YouTube and streaming their game, or someone might think going live on streaming a walk down a street. So when you think about live streaming for bigger events and bigger organizations, maybe you could share sort of the scale that you're helping people at the larger end. What is the scale at the larger end that you're helping people with live streaming, so that we can have that sense of perspective?
Yeah, I sure can. I don't want to. I want to say that it's live streaming really did start with the gamers. That sort of live user-generated content, basically. And if you look at live streaming as a form of content, then you can't really go wrong. The beauty of what we do with some of our larger clients, we've had 20,000 people on a live stream. Is that you're creating a context. Now, every story you tell has a context, and the context of live streaming is the most authentic one you can possibly do. So if you are going to live stream a big event, it's not as simple as just grab some cameras and put it out through social media. You can do that, and there are times when doing that is exactly right. But one of the things that comes up for large events for people often is, if I live stream my event, am I going to cannibalize my live audience? So they're going to all stay at home because they can now watch it from the screen. And the research has proven that that's not the case. Live streaming your event actually does increase your live audiences as well.
Whoops.
The great thing about that.
This is a live stream, and you can tell I'm struggling with it a little bit there. So there you go.
Switching there, Johnny.
It's funny, as you said it. It's like, Jay, could you demonstrate?
Yeah, look, that little segue there. Get some professionals to help you,
Yeah.
do this. And look, you are telling a story, so you want those people that are on the other end of your live stream to feel involved. I think very early on in the piece with live streaming, there was a lot of, look, if we're putting it to their computer, that's all we need to do. But there's a big difference between, say, going to a large event, let's say it's a corporate event, where, the buzz of the live place, there's usually a foyer with stands and exhibitors. You get to bump into people, you get to network with them. It's all going on at a live event. Now, if you're going to live stream that, you probably want to have a really good look at ways in which you can make it interactive for the people that aren't in the room. So it's not good enough just to show them what's going on. You have to find ways and means of getting them involved, whether it's polls, whether it's live Q&A, whether it's a chat thread down the side of the screen, whether you have breakout rooms where people can network. The organizations like ours and much bigger ones are having to get very, very creative to avoid that whole screen fatigue for people that are attending an event from their laptop. So it does come down to what you're trying to achieve, but it also, the biggest thing when you're doing large events is work really hard at getting it interactive. Make sure the people that are sitting at home are actually taking part in the event in whatever ways they can.
That's a different take on it, I think. Yeah, for people, because I think with gamers, they do that actually. They have a lot of comments flying by, and they kind of mention people. And if they get somebody like actually put some cash in, because they can also get that, they'll mention that, and they'll maybe do something special. So that has
more
a little bit of
there's more of a live buzz in that sort of live stream, and you want to try and get that into any big event that you live stream as well.
So I think to make this a little bit more interactive, why don't we do this and have start with, say, Jonathan, if you want to ask a question to say Ryan, if you had anything that he mentioned or that you have curious about Wrapped, I'll let you ask the question to Ryan, and then I'll have Ryan ask the question to Ellie, and we'll see if we can go around the table this way and see how that works.
Sure. So you want me to kick it off with a question to Ryan?
Sure. If you have a question, if not, I'll go back to the list of questions we have from the audience.
Okay, Ryan, can you give me in 30 seconds what Wrapped actually does for me as a business that's looking to create content?
Sure. It gives you all the tools and the knowledge to scale video across your business. And so the way the process works, we've got a bunch of templates in the platform for different types of videos that you can use, and that's going to pre-build your story and your shots. And so that gives you the inspiration to actually begin your project. From there, you can use your smartphone in our filming app. We also do supply a filming kit, as I was mentioning before, which turns your phone into a pro filming device. And that just syncs straight into your account. From there, you can either edit it yourself, or you can actually send all the footage to us. We do all the professional editing, including brand graphics, music, color grading, and sound. And then we'll send that back to you to review within 48 hours. And once you've approved the video, you can add captions and publish it out to all the various channels. And so what we've really tried to aim to do is streamline the whole production process, make it a lot more efficient and affordable for brands, so that they can scale the video content across all the different departments in their business.
That was really nice.
Love it. Yeah, I love it that, you think of filmmaking, but, taking shots, it's now quite easy using the internet just to send all the footage to you, isn't it? It's almost instantaneous now.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot more screen recordings, webcam. That's kind of all built in the platform. It's not just, I guess, smartphone. You can also send pro footage. So we're trying to be quite open and flexible with where you get your footage from and what you need to do with it.
Thanks. Ryan, if you want to ask Ellie a question, let's see what has come up for you in her answers. I'm
always craving more TikTok knowledge because I'm not on it enough myself. So I'm going to throw you another TikTok question. What do you think about the, I know you said kind of it's the hot thing right now, I suppose, and what's the time span that it's going to be? It seems like that's where the audience is. What about the age demographics, I suppose? Obviously, it started out with a much younger demo. Is it now starting to become, what if you're a brand, what sort of demographic can you look for in TikTok?
Definitely. I think that's a really interesting question because TikTok has been kind of labeled the platform for the kind of like Gen Z and the millennial generations, but it really isn't. You've got I think the fastest growing audience right now is your 45 pluses. So it's, and that's, of course, that's also partly because they've kind of already nailed the younger audiences. So there is a reason for that, but it's becoming, it is a platform that isn't just for entertainment, but in terms of browser habits and how people kind of consume that content, it is very much one of those platforms that is kind of easy browsing. They like to kind of just scroll through, and that does appeal to the kind of older generations as well, more and more. So what we're seeing is a lot of brands are kind of taking it a lot more seriously, whereas before they were kind of going, oh, do you know what, our audiences are a lot older than this. We can't be seen to be kind of being either immature or off-brand in any way. But we're just seeing so many brands actually kind of use it in a way that isn't just about kind of just loads of banter and fun stuff. It's also kind of being used for a lot of educational content and providing a lot of insights. So for us as an agency, we're always kind of just thinking, okay, how are we going to still find a way of creating content that that will sit well on this platform for a brand that might not be necessarily or traditionally one that's all about kind of fun and entertainment. And there is a bit of a challenge there. But I think the beauty of TikTok is once you've kind of harnessed a good kind of flow and you've got like a pattern or a theme in the content that you're producing, you tend to keep hold of your followers and they stay quite loyal. So there is like a different value system on there that we're always kind of playing with.
Awesome. Thank you. Ellie, we'll come back and we'll dig into some of those things you mentioned. I think they're both Ryan and Ellie, very interesting. For Jonathan on live streaming, I'm going to ask you if anything has come up for you, Ellie, that you'd like to ask Jonathan about live streaming.
Yeah, well, actually, we sometimes work with fashion brands around like London Fashion Week, and we'll have our team on hand kind of we'll delegate people to kind of work in different sections. So some of them will be in hair and makeup, some of them will be like right by the kind of main runway, and a lot of them will be like backstage or outside the front, some with VIP talent and all of that. And we will, you know, the shows can have between like maybe up to like 2,000 or 3,000 people attending. So it's in these huge spaces. And we've always kind of found it like a real challenge to coordinate things so that we've got, you know, someone like getting this piece of content at that time, this piece of that content at another time, and then finding a way of pushing it out in a really nice kind of streamlined way. So with your with the live streaming, how many people do you have on hand, and how is it actually coordinated? Is it all fed through one system? Like it's I'm sure it must be kind of like semi-choreographed beforehand as well.
Great question, Ellie. It is very much live TV. But one of the benefits of live streaming in general is the authenticity that comes up. You know, sometimes you can't get it as perfectly slick as you would like. And we find, in fact, the research shows that actually adds authenticity and builds trust with customers. Having said that, the answer to your question is, generally speaking, we'll set up a headquarter area. So we'll mask off an area and we'll put down the tables. There'll be a ton of screens. There'll be switches. There'll be somebody on sound. There'll be somebody on what's actually happening through the stream, the switcher, the switching engineer. And then there may even be other people watching and directing using comms, talking to camera people. So you can have a number of cameras all feeding into the system, and then you have a main switcher who's determining exactly what's going on screen, what bottom thirds are going on, any captions. You've usually got a bit of pre-recorded material in standby. So if something does go dreadfully wrong, remember live events are live events. You know, you've got that piece to throw to that may be pre-produced, but it keeps the end result for the visitors really slick. The other thing that's come out these days is there are some amazing cameras. We use them a lot. You know, the PTZs are probably the best and most useful cameras, because you don't actually always need to have a gigantic tripod with a person standing behind the camera using it. We use a lot of cameras where you can preset camera angles, preset zoom settings. So at the click of a button, somebody sitting at a desk can pretty much fly that zoom in, and you can even move these cameras around. You can, you know, we fly them with a joystick rather than having a person. Wow. That allows us to put cameras in really interesting places without the OH&S concerns, but also, you know, you can really get some good POV stuff. Yeah. If you've got a catwalk, you could almost have a PTZ sitting at the end of the catwalk. You don't need a person behind it. You can also have them mounted to lighting brackets as well. So we have anywhere between 2 and 15 cameras at an event like that. And then it does come down to the producer or switcher who's determining exactly what's going out
What's really cool about what you're sharing, two things that come up. One is that you're essentially, with the point of view that you're saying, you're kind of making it so that the audience can almost be there and really giving them that firsthand experience and moving through the way they would maybe move their head around the room and so on, which is really interesting. And it also just reminds me that there's a kind of almost a merging going on between marketing and reality TV. With reality TV, I can see Ellie has something to say, so I'll go back to Ellie. Anything that's coming up for you on that?
Well, yeah, no, it's funny because we're being in social, we're constantly thinking about like the storylines and, how can we create like a clever, engaging storyline that will kind of get people hooked. And a lot of it is kind of like very much about like pre-producing that and then talking the client or the talent through that so that they are like totally on board with it. But it is kind of a bit like reality TV because what we often discover is, we're so used to, doing this all day, every day. But, to the end client or the person that's going to be in front of the camera or whatever, they're not necessarily like used to that. So there are some kind of like, let's call them like authentic errors.
They're gold. They are gold.
And it just adds to the loveliness of it, I think.
So the reality TV aspect, as Jonathan was saying, is all about letting the viewer know that this is a human being and they make a lot of mistakes. And I think that's an interesting idea that maybe would scare some brands as well, because they're not used to necessarily going down that path and they might feel that they're putting a lot at risk. So yeah, we'll come back around in a minute. So I'm going to go back to Ryan. And I think, Ryan, from your point of view, as Jonathan asked about, the Wrapped platform and some of the things that, Wrapped that you're trying to help people to do, with the clients that you've worked with so far that have gotten on the platform, used this process and this workflow, what do you think that you've discovered in terms of unlocking essentially their potential to use video better? Like what have you seen from that point of view?
It's definitely getting him in the game, I think, is the first part. The video's just been off limits for so many people because of the cost and the time. Usually it's just that thought of, look, we'd love to do video, and we have this conversation a lot with customers. But yeah, they've always been held back by the time and the cost restraints. And so it takes a little bit of time actually to kind of onboard them and get them kind of thinking a little bit more flexible and fast with video. And once they do that, there's a lot of, I guess, wish list ideas that start to come up. And so working with the customers probably more just around probably how to script the content has been, I think, probably a bit of an eye-opening thing for me, because my background is obviously film. I kind of take it for granted a little bit. It's not actually the filming. The gear is actually pretty easy. People are pretty used to filming on phones these days. But we're really trying to help customers is putting a little bit of strategy behind what video you're making, what's the objective, who's the audience, and then kind of how would you script that so that it's going to be an engaging piece of content. And so that's where we're actually focusing right now a lot on, is trying to deliver value in that area and help brands kind of start to use video in a lot more places.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially since you're saying that people need to get on board, number one, and they need to start having one of the questions I was going to ask both you and Ellie, and I think Jonathan as well, is the difference between sort of thinking about a channel or a place as a one-time thing. Like, I want to make a few videos, right? And they do it, and then they kind of think, okay, I did it, I'm done. Versus turning that into something that you're going to be doing every year or every quarter or every month. So I think I'll start with just with Ryan, since we're already chatting about it. I can imagine people saying, okay, I made 10 videos, I made 20 videos, I'm done. So what do you say to them how do you help them to think through, no, this is actually something that is, with content marketing, it's all about consistency, having schedules, having something going on a regular basis. What's your experience with that? And then I'll go to Ellie and Jonathan as well to ask them the same question.
Sure. The biggest thing we start with is treat video like every other marketing initiative that you are currently doing. It seems like video kind of gets forgotten a little bit because it's in the too hard basket, but start with a strategy, build a content plan. Don't just dive straight into it necessarily. If you need to get a few runs on the board, then definitely do that, but then take a bit of a step back, because that's where the good brands right now are actually getting the most value out of video. It's quite a lot to actually embark on it, even if it is cheap. You want to make sure that you're actually getting multiple outputs, different versions for different channels. You want to be filming lots of stuff all in one go and being able to reuse that over time. And you can only really do that with the planning and putting a bit of a strategy in place. It doesn't need to be massive, but just having a bit of a content strategy and think about, where should I be using video content across my marketing mix? Even if you put that down in an Excel spreadsheet, that's a good place to start. And then, yeah, as you start to make the content, just look for ways in which you can repurpose it. Once you have the content in the bank, it's very easy to do an organic social version, a 2-minute for the website, even some recuts for your existing customer base through an email marketing campaign. And also just think of a video as, instead of one video, as a series of videos. You can usually extrapolate out one concept into probably 10 different videos as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to start to scale the video across different areas of the business, as well as I guess different series or concepts within a certain marketing channel.
There was something you said during your recording of your talk, and I think Ellie will probably touch on this as well, but it's a pretty fascinating idea, which is that a lot of companies actually have so many opportunities to capture video, but they're missing them. It's almost like the kids are growing up and they're not taking photos. But they have, for example, they have this amazing company event. No video material has been really put into a library. It's maybe in people's personal roles, but there's no video library of that. They go to a conference and they showcase their new things, and people love it. They're up on stage showcasing it, but there's no video library being made. So I think that's fascinating that you mentioned that during your talk. And for people who are listening, that's kind of a breakthrough idea, is just to examine all the things that are going on in your business anyway, and really incorporate, for example, video capture at the very minimum. Have some minimum amount of sort of thinking around, hey, let's get some video capture going to build our library, and then things like labeling that and putting them into certain places so that when they contact someone like Ellie at Truffle, then it's like, okay, this is our whole library that we have. So I'll just quickly go to Ellie, and I think the panel seems to be heating up a little bit, which is nice. So on your side, Ellie, how are you advising the same kind of thing? Like, people have so many amazing things going on in their business, but they're not capturing any of that. So
Yeah. Well, generally what we do is we try to start quite simple, and we'll normally say to a brand, okay, well, what are your three or four main content themes? Like, what are your content pillars? And then underneath those, list out all of the different things that you might be able to capture that would fall into those categories. Then, as we know that with social, you need to still kind of be very relevant, and you can't just kind of do all of your filming at the start of the year and then spread it all out and hope for the best, because things change, and to stay relevant, you need to kind of still be very much kind of having a finger on the pulse and responding and reacting to what's going on right now. So it's very much a case of kind of getting your evergreen, what we call evergreen content, stuff that's always going to be relevant, together in a bank so that is there. Kind of in the same way that, Jonathan, you'll have your standby content just there in case something else is going on and you need to put something up. And then allocate some time or a budget. These things do take some investment, if it's time or energy or money, if you're paying for a company to produce it for you. And have that kind of set so that you know what you've got, in terms of timings, etc., when you're going to be rolling those out over the course of the year. What we kind of look at when it comes to video content for social is we're looking at all of the different platforms, and very much it is very much about kind of people wanting to consume bite-sized content. So much like what Ryan said, you can often start with one longer video and then actually extract lots of different clips, and that's still super valuable. So you're making your content sweat as much as possible. And the good thing is also with social, people start to really get to know you. A video is the most engaging type of content that you could use. A picture paints 1,000 words, a video paints 1,000,000. So how are you ensuring that your audience gets to really know what the theme or the pattern is, so that they know exactly, you know, what to expect whenever they fall upon a piece of content that has, I don't know, your brand name kind of all over it, whether that's in the format, in the people that are put in front, the colors, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So consistency and pattern is very, very important, so that people can kind of like really know what they're going to be seeing, because at the same time, video is still an investment of the viewer's time as well. So it's one of those things where if you don't get people within the first few seconds, they're gone. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, how do we really engage people consistently?
Yeah, one of the things, Ellie, thanks so much for sharing that concept of consistency. One of the things that really came through as you were sharing that to me, and I think people listening probably got it as well, is the storytelling aspect. And I think what you're also sharing, and you've shared before in your prior talk, was around the layers of stories, and how, in a sense, when you're putting together a social media campaign, you can almost think of it like an episodes of a show, and you know, maybe get people interested to watch the whole thing, get them interested to come back and watch the next one.
Yeah.
You know, open loops, cliffhangers, characters, that concept of like, you know, sort of seeing it as a vision for a story that represents the brand, what's going on, creating curiosity, creating those emotions, and keeping that going over many months. That's really fascinating. And I think that came through in the way you described, you know, having the same characters, having elements. So that storytelling and the arc of that story and keeping people curious is just so interesting. Lovely, a really interesting, I think a really interesting topic. Jonathan, to you, you know, there are probably organizations who are watching that have 5,000, 10,000 people. I know you've mentioned some of the bigger brands you've worked with in the past, and some, for example, some educational organizations. Maybe they were thinking, okay, well, we'll do it once, but is it something we should plan every quarter, every year? How the same kind of question I had for Ryan and for Ellie. What I'm looking for is, and for the audience, is this something that they could think of as part of their year? Is this something that they could think of as part of their ongoing sort of storytelling through these live events? What's your thoughts on thinking that you think the audience should be taking away from that?
Yeah, look, there's two things there, Jay. One is that what live streaming has over all the other channels is there's a sense of immediacy, that that whole thing that this is happening live now, and if you don't come and take part now, you'll miss out, which is true to a certain degree. But then, like Ellie and probably Ryan as well, we take the content that we make out of a live event and we bring it back down and chunk it down into content for social and for brands to use in other channels. Having said that, there's an awful lot to be said for building an audience. It's exactly the same with social. But if you're going to do live streams and you keep them consistent and you have a story arc, one of the most powerful things you can do, and you don't have to be big to do this. We've got a client who is 2 people. And every second Thursday, they do a half-hour live stream where they get a guest in and they just talk for half an hour and they take questions from their audience. Knowing that that's going to happen every second Thursday, and knowing that they've got different guests in to talk about things, is one, building their credibility, but it's also building the audience. And we've just watched the audience grow. And while it might have started out small, it's gathered momentum like a rolling snowball, to the point where not only have they got a really good online following, but they've got people saying, hey, can we come and watch you do it? Right? So their live audience is growing as well as their live streaming audience. And it's that consistency. It's just that do it regularly. And when people know what to expect and you keep it branded, consistent, but relevant more than anything else, people will turn up, people will watch, and once again, make it interactive. Always have, the ability for people to type their questions in or run a poll while they're there. Make them feel part of that event. You don't have to be big to do that. You can do that in a really small way as well, especially if you're choosing a social media platform to live stream to. If you live stream onto Facebook or YouTube, you can have your audience participating. You just have to be organized.
Thank you. I think, go ahead, Ali.
I was just going to jump in. I think like one of the biggest things with live streaming is that kind of element of FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, like this is something that we kind of like really use whenever we're teasing an upcoming live stream, because we're almost kind of like putting the message out there that the content will be here for, as long as it's actually in motion. But after that, see it now, or you will miss out. So
it's very powerful.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good point that we could dive a little deeper on, which is that there's so much out there that people say bookmark, or I'll come back to later. They watch maybe a few seconds or a couple minutes. I think this also happens with corporate videos and with all kinds of different things, even entertainment. People just I'll come back to that later. So I think that's a really important principle that both Jonathan and Ellie, you've really hit on, which is essentially balancing sort of giving people everything after the fact with making it sort of a special time where people are getting something by giving their attention, they're getting something special back. And I think that's really fascinating. And I would imagine that the other question that was coming up for me, Jonathan, when you were sharing about the sort of the annual process and the quarterly process and building the audience, and I think Ellie has mentioned this a bit as well. What was really coming up for me is that it seems that someone who's attending a live stream may not know what to expect. A brand who's going to do live streaming may not know what to expect, and so on, right? Because it just sounds like they have some picture in their mind. So in that regard, and it can be so many different things, right? So in that regard, from a live stream point of view, I would just ask the question, and I'll go around the table. We'll do the summary in a minute. What really is a good example? Like, are there any sort of examples? Like Ellie has mentioned the fashion show. I thought that was great. That was kind of maybe a little bit unique and intriguing. But what are some other examples that anyone can think of that just in terms of live events, live social media, that come to mind that people who are watching can go, that's a good representation of what's possible?
Yeah, I actually went to an industry event talk the other day, and it was hosted by a company that does kind of live video shopping called Bambuza, and they've developed this like wonderful software that allows brands to plug in a live video stream hosted through the app and into their website, and show the kind of live video rollout. But then what's also happening at the same time is you've got all of these like products that are being promoted at the same time. So as the influencer or the presenter or whoever is speaking on the video, they'll be saying, oh, like I use this, I don't know, excellent face cream or something like that. Look at my skin, it's so wonderful. And then it will pop up in the corner of the screen, and then people who are watching will just click on it and it goes straight through. So I'm kind of sat there going, wow, this is this is very intense. Like that takes a lot of production, but actually like they seem to have nailed they've seemed to have nailed it. And I think there is probably like a bit of script writing and whatnot, because when it's live, it's live. But it's so interesting to kind of see how like live video is now being taken to a whole other level, and I'm just quite excited to kind of see how consumers are going to respond, or are they going to find it a bit of a novelty to start with, and then it might flop after a while. We don't know. So that's just the kind of beauty of the ever-changing world of social media and technology.
There have been like video shopping channels that have done extremely well, I think in almost every country. So this is almost doing that, but at a kind of like a one-on-one level almost. Like you could tune in who's shopping and who you want to follow and see what they're buying. Maybe there's 4 or 5 people shopping right now, and somebody comes and commits, I'm going to shop for 30 minutes. You want to watch me? I'm going to be here for the next 30 minutes shopping and talking about what I like. Really fascinating.
Yeah.
Jonathan, back to you regarding that question about what's an example of live streaming that could help, in addition to the amazing one that Ellie shared, which was absolutely
look, I love the one that Ellie shared. It was about a year ago. We were actually asked to live stream a 24-hour online shopping event, and that was the hardest thing to get our heads around, because it wasn't a live event. It's a 24-hour shopping event. So we literally had to invent live TV for an online event, but it was a lot of fun. We got there in the end, but it was a big production. I think the thing that stands out for me most, Jay, in answer to your question, other than the way that the example Ellie's given, is if you've got a product that people buy, that they you can't understate the importance of your audience, of your users, of your customers, and getting them involved in some way with a live stream will beget more customers. We have one client that it was one of our very first clients, Adobe. And in order to have Adobe users, i.e. their customers already, stay with their product and use their product more, there was a monthly, you wouldn't call it a tutorial, there was a host, and it was on the same time every month, but they would get an influencer in, a well-known illustrator or a well-known designer, or even a video person. They would get them in and the host would interview them, and they would literally do and talk about how to use the product during the live stream. And people, we got a regular following. We recognized the people that came every month and they asked the questions, but they were able to ask questions of the host, i.e. the brand. And they could also ask questions of, an influencer or a very famous person that who's very successful at their art. So it was both a reward for them, but also they could really get involved and learn more about the product. Now, what this does is brings more people in. They become advocates. They become better users. They stay with the product longer. So if you've got a product that, you can get extra sales by having happier customers, live stream your happy customers, live stream interviews with influencers in that market. And, what you'll get out of that is huge. You also get the benefit of the influencers audience as well.
I'm gonna say thank you to everybody and make sure that we, just make sure we're on schedule. So I think some of the themes today that were really came through that were somewhat unexpected and really powerful were the authenticity. That's the number one thing. I think Ellie mentioned it a few times, and I think also Ryan and Jonathan, you both mentioned it, which is that you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be polished, you don't have to be over-scripted. So I think that authenticity is really one of the angles that, one of the themes that I think people can take away from today. And, I think it would be great to have more examples of what that really is, doing it right or doing it maybe not so well, right? So the second theme I think that has really come through today is storytelling and where the story comes from. Like it can actually come from your users. It can come from, the influencer who also loves the product. But having a story and really crafting that over time, I think was the second theme. And I think the third one is making, having pillars and having a process around what content you want to curate, throughout, different events that are going on and how you can be strategic about incorporating that. There's definitely things that are already happening, as Ryan mentioned, that you could curate. Ellie mentioned as well, and Ryan, Jonathan, you also mentioned it. So I think just to be respectful and keep ourselves on schedule, I'll just say thank you to everybody, and maybe everyone can just have one kind of parting, if you will, insight or thought that you had today as you were listening, and then at the very end, we have about 2 minutes left, so keep it short. Just one parting insight that you'd like to share with the audience, Ryan.
Sure. Coming back to my get in the game theme, I think if you're a little bit nervous about video, start with an internal video for your own team and just get some runs on the board, get some confidence up, and then you can take it and put it in front of your customers.
Love it. Ellie?
Yeah, I'd say when it comes to like your format and your theme, have a look at what your competitors are doing or other brands that you find quite inspirational, and just put those together in a kind of video-ish mood board. Extract the elements that you think are the most appropriate and relevant to you, and then start practicing and exploring how you can apply that to your own content.
Love it. Jonathan?
You cannot get closer to your prospective market than with a live stream. Being there in the flesh, in real time, plan it out, make sure that you know what you're giving your audience, you know what you're giving your customers, and then give it to them in the most personal way possible, thousands at a time.
Awesome. All right, guys, we hit the mark of this live stream with some small ups and downs as well. Everybody had fun, and I really appreciated the different points of view. And we'll have another live panel coming up in 24 hours. So see everyone there. Enjoy the conference. And we will have the next Content Marketing Virtual Summit 90 days after this one. We'll start the countdown. So we're going to be following some of the principles that were brought up today. See everyone at the next show and the next event. See you. Thanks.
See you guys.
Thank you. You guys can stay on and